What is going on, y'all? This is your boy, Ali Buddy, and man, Atleti versus Arsenal. A lot more balanced than yesterday's game, but we can't all be the main event, right? You can't be a five-star classic, otherwise it diminishes its value. Sometimes you need your 3.5 star, right? And that's what this was, I think. I think this was a solid game as far as entertainment goes, but we're not gonna rate these like wrestling matches here. But it was a lot more balance of a game compared to yesterday. And when you look at these two teams, they don't have insane attacks. They don't have the best players offensively. So this is to be expected. A lot of people said, "Oh, it's going to be Haram ball, low block, free low block," which doesn't make a lot of sense. But I mean, shout out Milan and Juve if you want to see how that looks like. But overall, at the end of the day, this was a very solid, fun match for me. I think, especially with all the VAR controversy, which we'll get into. And yeah, but let's start. Let's set the scene here. I mean, the Metropolitano was absolutely rocking. I mean, the toilet papers, the chanting, they were up for this game. The atmosphere was incredible. That's what you love to see in a UCL semifinal. And yeah, obviously the occasion calls for it, but man, the ambiance of a stadium, that's something different. And I love to see knockout games held in hot places like that. We can only hope the Emirates gives you something similar. Last year, you kind of felt the nervousness, the anxiety in the crowd. I'm hoping Arsenal fans will learn from that because, and I think it's an English thing too, where it's like, since the English don't chant like other European countries, they're not. I don't. When I say don't chant, I mean like they're not. They're not like ultras, right? They're not. They don't have the same sort of culture. They're very invested in the game and game actions outside of goals, right? Whether it's like even if it's just someone getting a nutmeg or very little things, right? They'll shout "man on," like all these things, but it's not like other European teams, right? And I think sometimes that hurts them in big knockout competitions like the UCL or even in Europa League, right? Where because you're so invested, if the game is not going your way, then all of a sudden the team doesn't feel as backed, right? It's hard. Like the nervousness and the anxiety just gets compounded because all of these other people are feeling it with you, right? So it's tough. So that was a lot to say, but I just think really for the Emirates in the next leg, I think crowd atmosphere is going to be huge, and obviously it was huge today for Atleti. Now let's get into the game a little bit. Both of these teams, like I said, don't have great offensive capabilities, so there was these periods of sustained possession. You could call it dominance if you want, but really with all that possession, there weren't a lot of clear cut opportunities. Odegaard had a chance, I think. But outside of that, like, there were some crosses, some very contested headers here and there. But in the first half, it wasn't too much really, going on. Alvarez had a crazy, crazy attempt with his weak foot. The amount of speed he had on that, Raya made a great save. But I'm like, man, with his weak foot outside the box? Because that was an incredible shot. But great save by Raya. And then we get to the big penalty at the end. I mean, nothing much more to say. It's a penalty. Gyokeres tries to protect the ball. I don't. Maybe it was Pubil or someone else ran into him in on the Letzi defense, and yeah, I mean Gyokeres falls over. It's always going to be called a pen. I don't think it's soft. I think it's correct pen. Some people think it might have been a red card, which I think is kind of ridiculous because at the end of the day, like double jeopardy, it's clearly he's looking for the ball there, the Atleti defender. So we're never gonna call that a red card. I just want to get that out of the way. It's not a red card ever. Anyway, Gyökeres steps up for the pen, slots it home coolly. That's what Arsenal bought him for. That hits his celebration. You know what I'm saying? And Arsenal are going to the half 1-0. And it was very contested first half, but you could argue Arsenal kind of were the better team in that half, and you could probably even say throughout the game. I think Arsenal are the better team in general, but yeah, that first half clearly won by Arsenal. They go to the halftime break. We come out of halftime, and Atleti are on one. They are on one. You can feel the ambiance in the crowd, like I was saying before. They're coming out guns blazing. They're trying to get things going, and they weren't the best opportunities. You know, not like some of the chances maybe you saw last night, but I mean, they were going for it. They were definitely in there in Arsenal's face. They were on the front foot, and it was nice to see them respond. Obviously, you got to use that home field advantage too. The crowd egging them on. Now, here we get to this penalty decision. Okay, so how do I describe this? I guess I don't even remember who shot this. Maybe it was Alvarez. Maybe it was someone else, Griezmann or someone. But Arsenal are defending, and the ball hits Ben White's hand. Okay, now it's like after yesterday, what's even a penalty anymore? But it's a similar situation yesterday, right? It deflects off of Ben White's shin, and then it hits him in the hand. But like what I was saying yesterday about Alfonso Davies is when his happened, yeah, it hit his body first, but he makes himself look guilty because he has two different motions, right? First, he's hands behind his back, and because of the precedent that's been set, right? We've seen defenders turn away from crosses with their hands behind their back constantly. It's a thing you can do, thus being a common thing that's gonna play, into their interpretation of the handball, right? But like I said, Davies started with his hand behind his back, and when the ball hits him, he takes his hands outside of his back. So it makes him guilty, and then obviously there's also the potential goal, his if his hand's not there, does that ball hit someone? Does someone get on the end of that ball? We'll never know. Does the goalie spill that? Like it is, but there's so many possibilities. So that's why I think Davies got called for that pen. And now you have a similar situation the next day, but I think it's a little bit different because it's tough. Because with Ben White's hand, his hand was already out. His hand was already out. So he's trying to bring his hand in, which also makes him guilty, right? Or he's like, it's coming in. Maybe he's not even trying to bring it in, but it's coming in, right? But his hand's already out. And yeah, it bounces off of his hand. I don't think there's a potential goal threat there at all, but you know, sure. But because he's bringing it in, that also makes him guilty, and it's tough. Those are very two tough, harsh pens. I'd say I don't like to see them given, but also you can argue it. You can argue it, but it's tough to argue. Like I don't know, man. I don't know. I really don't know about that because that's just so tough. But look, it's there. They got the pen. Alvarez steps in, and man, Julian Alvarez played no games. He said, "I got a penalty." Going straight in, man. That was a whizzer. A wizard. Like that's how it felt like it was traveling at the speed of light. What a great penalty by Julian Alvarez, which is funny because in the Copa del Rey final, he probably could have used a penalty like that. But I digress. Great pen. It's even now 1-1. Crowd is up. Atleti starts to push and push and push. They had a few chances, obviously that big, big chance by Lookman. I mean, Lookman, man. Lookman basically gets the ball on the penalty spot, in open play off of a cross by I think Ben White or maybe it was Rice or whoever. But he gets on the cross, right? He beats an Arsenal defender. I think it was Saliba or Gabriel. But he beats a defender to the ball, shakes him down, and he's basically on top of the ball. I gotta say that because people know that's hard to kick. It's hard to kick a ball like out from under you, but man, he gets it in like almost a near perfect position otherwise. That's a tough one to miss. He hits it with his left foot, obviously his weak foot, and it's a very tame effort in the end. Good save by Raya though. He couldn't really direct it anywhere except down the middle, which is where Raya was. So it's tough, but Atleti are gonna want that one back. And then there's obviously another big chance for Atleti that Griezmann had where he hit the post. Molina had one that it was like a banger of a kick towards the end. Molina had, but it was just too much height on it. Man, Atleti are gonna want some of those chances back, but we'll come back to that because after Atleti do their push, Arsenal get into the Atleti box. They start having their own sustained possession. You know, they brought in Eze, they brought in Saka, Trossard. I'm missing someone else, Mascara, I think. Jesus. They brought in basically a whole new attack, right? They're making pressure on the Atleti box, and they get another penalty called for them, where I think it's Hanko who from Atleti who steps on Eze's foot, and it's a very tough one. This pen right here, this one's tough because they call the pen on the field. Then the VAR tells the ref to go check it again. And if you check it on replay, there is contact. Hanko does not touch the ball. So there's contact from Hanko on top of, like this, on top of Eze's foot. Now, it's not like this. It's more so like this. Like, it's very small. But there's contact. A. B. Hanko does not touch the ball. Right? And the contact comes after Eze touches the ball. So, and obviously it's in the penalty box. And so that's a lot that goes in there, right? And now the referee is going to the monitor to look at all this. And he sees this, they're showing him all the different angles. But this just isn't enough, apparently. Now, look, I know Arsenal fans are going to be upset. I understand. By the rule, that should be a pen. In my opinion, it's not enough to overturn a pen. Now, I'm going to talk to you as a neutral, as a fan who loves the game. I don't like to see pens like that. Pens like this, please, get up. Get up. That's like, I don't know, maybe it's a woke opinion, whatever you want to call it, but these types of pens, these toenail pens, get it out of the game. I just don't think that should be deciding football games. I almost prefer the handball over these toenail pens. Now, that's just me personally. Still, objectively speaking, Arsenal deserved the penalty. You could say they were robbed. You could say they were robbed. I'm not going to lie to you. You could say that. They were robbed of a pen there, I think. Because, I recall a very similar penalty like this. Maybe it was this year or last year, Monaco versus Benfica in the Champions League. It was last year, of course, yeah. Monaco, Benfica in the Champions League. Very similar thing. It's just it was like a very small kick to another person's foot. It's not really toenail. This one's a little more, but like things like this, no, I don't need that in the game. That's not quality. That's not, you know what I mean? I hate to see it. I really do. But that's the rule. What are the rules there for if not to be followed, right? If not to be adhered to. I know rules are meant to be broken, whatever, but let's be serious, right? What are the rules there for? So I think Arsenal can be feeling hard done by, but eventually at the end of the game, it ends 0-0. Obviously, there was that big Griezmann chance. Arsenal, I think, also had a chance. Might have been Saka or someone. Saka put in a cross, but it got saved or something like that. But there wasn't too many big chances I recall at the end. Let me know if I'm missing one. But it ends 1-1. And I was saying before this that Arsenal going into this need some sort of result, right? Because obviously they're also doing the Premier League thing. So it would be great for them to have a result. It wasn't a win, but I think Arsenal can be happy. I think Arsenal fans can be content. This is what you want to see. You go there, you go back 0-0. Arsenal, I think, are still the better team, player for player, right? You can take it back to your crib, 0-0. Go win it in London. The fans will be behind you. Make it happen. 1-1 is far from the worst thing in the world. I think Atleti in particular really needed something to go to the Emirates and not have a lead. I don't think Atleti are going to survive. I really don't. We'll see what happens though. But yeah, Arsenal, I think, especially when you take into account, Atleti missed so many chances today. Atleti missed that Lookman chance. That Lookman chance reminds me of like Dembele versus Liverpool. Like those are big chances you got to take. Griezmann hitting the post, right? Like these chances, especially when you're at home, they bite you. I know this firsthand. PSG Dortmund semifinal 2024. My goodness, six times we hit the post. Ridiculous, right? So you got to take these opportunities. I think leaving the game, of the two teams, Arsenal should be more satisfied. I think Atletico are going to have a lot of work to do in London. We'll see how what happens. The good thing for Atletico is they can rest, right? They can go rest their players on the weekend. I don't even know who they play on the weekend. Let's take a look. Let me pull up the file mob for you. But Atletico can go rest on the weekend, right? Atletico go to Valencia. That's tough because you got to travel to Valencia, which I believe is further south or east, whatever. But it's you got to travel, and then you got to go all the way up to London right after that. Now, if you're looking at the table, they're pretty much firmly set in the La Liga UCL spots. Yeah. If La Liga might end up with 5, but even if they don't, like 10 points 5 games to go. Yeah, bro, you can drop points, bro. This game matters. What are we talking about? You got a UCL final you can go to. So yeah, on the other hand, Arsenal, hey man, this is what you signed up for. I mean, you brought all those players, you brought like I said, you made the sandwich, right? You brought all these guys in. You can go to full or you can go to London, host Fulham. Um, look, I mean, Fulham's a tough team, I guess. All the Premier League teams are tough apparently now, but no, Fulham's a good team, and but you bought the players to be able to do this, right? You should be able to play basically Madueke and whoever, right? All these backups, or you want to rotate however you want to rotate, but you should be able to handle this. This is what you bought all the players for. So I'm not gonna hear, right? And let me speak on this to end the video. I'm not gonna hear anything about you know congested schedule, not congested schedule. Sorry, difficulty of leagues. You know, the ability for other teams to rest in the league, et cetera, et cetera. Because people are talking about that with Bayern, PSG, Atleti. They can all rest in their leagues, right? Atleti's a little bit different because there's no title race. They're not in the title race. Maybe if they were, they won't rest as much. But still, I'm not gonna hear anything about that. You know why? Because the Premier League is the richest league, right? The Premier League, if you look at the top 10 teams that have spent the most in the transfer market over the last 5 years, 80% are Premier League teams. Not only are you buying the most expensive players, and the theory is the more expensive you are, the better a player you are, right? But you're buying more players, right? Because you have more games. I mean, look at Chelsea, right? And then look at Arsenal. You bought all these players for moments like this. Don't complain to me about, oh, we need this and that. Rotate. That's what you bought all the players for. For times like this, where you're in multiple competitions and you need low drop off in quality, then that's what you do. You go out and you buy. Just like City, just like PSG, just like Bayern, just like Barca, back in the day, of course, not right now, but just like Madrid. Like, bro, Madrid, prime three-peat Madrid was running like Hesse and Morata in the league, bro. They weren't running BBC in the league all the time. I digress. I just want to put that out there. We're looking forward to the next leg. Arsenal, I think, are the better team. I think today, especially when you look at the way Arsenal approached the game, they were pragmatic. Yes, I was telling Arsenal to just resign. You'll find opportunities on the counter. They did find some opportunities. They didn't do much with it. And they still also had time in possession. So we'll see how that goes in the Emirates. Do you want to be the protagonist or do you want to, still play as I guess the provincial side and, wait for the counter? I don't know, but Arsenal I think are the better team no matter what they do. They should win. We'll see what happens. I think Simeone has a lot of work cut out for him. But I think Arsenal just can't beat themselves, and I think the quality will show out. Even if this game goes to extra time, Arsenal should win this. I think, even if the players aren't showing up. Like today, Bukayo Saka looked awful. I'm not going to lie to you. Losing balls, and obviously he's coming back from injury. I'm not trying to like make a general statement on Bukayo Saka's quality. I know a lot of people are doing that right now. No, I'm not doing that right now, but I just think for whatever happens, even if Bukayo Saka has a stinker, even if Trossard has a stinker, Martinelli, Gyokeres. Arsenal collectively should still be able to beat Atletico de Madrid. It should be like you would need a total collapse, I think, if Arsenal were to not go through in this tie. And I would consider it a failure if you don't go through. Because you had an easy run. With all due respect to Leverkusen and Sporting, you had an easy run to this time. And then if you're gonna pick any of the teams to face, anybody would take Atleti. So there's that. But anyway, I'm yapping a little much here. I just think Arsenal should be looking forward to next week, Tuesday. You should be headed to Budapest. We'll see what happens though. Until next time, thank you guys so much for watching. It's been your boy, Ollie Footy. We out.